You're listening to Sim1Ton from BizSupportOnline.net. In this InfoPath video, you'll learn how to create a simple SharePoint Designer workflow that reads data from an InfoPath form and creates a new item in a SharePoint list. Here I'm in InfoPath Designer 2010, where I've already pre-created a simple InfoPath form template that has just one control on it, a text box control called surname. The idea is that I would like to submit this InfoPath form to a SharePoint form library and then have a SharePoint Designer workflow kickoff, grab the InfoPath form, retrieve the data that was stored in this surname field, and then use that data to create a SharePoint list item. So the first step to create such a solution is to first publish the InfoPath form template to a SharePoint form library, but then publish it in a way that the SharePoint Designer workflow can access the fields in the InfoPath form. So I'm just going to start the publishing process and publish it to a SharePoint form library. I'll create a new form library called myFormLib. And then here's where you can add fields to promote them to the SharePoint form library, or the default content type in this case. I'll just select the surname field here and then leave everything as is. These settings will basically create a list column in the SharePoint form library so that the SharePoint Designer workflow can access it. So once the InfoPath form template has been published to SharePoint, we should see a column here appear in the SharePoint form library, and this column should be accessible by the SharePoint Designer workflow. So the next step would be to create a SharePoint Designer workflow. So I'll go to SharePoint Designer 2010 and I'll refresh my lists. Once I've refreshed the list, I'll keep things simple and create a simple list workflow. So I'll go to list workflow and then select the SharePoint form library to which I published my InfoPath form template, and then I'll call it something simple like my WF. Click OK. So the first thing we want to do is add an action that will create a SharePoint list item. So I'll just click action, and then I'll select from the list actions group, I'll select create list item, and I'll create my item in a custom SharePoint list called my list, which I've already pre-created. It doesn't have any columns in it except this title column, and this title column is what I'm going to set to the value that will be retrieved from the InfoPath form. So I'll just click this, select this title field, click modify, and then here I'll set the value of the title to be equal to the current item, which is what the workflow will be running on, which is in fact the InfoPath form. And then inside there I'll look for the surname field, and then I'll click OK, and that is all we should require. And then I'll configure the workflow to start automatically when an item is created, and I'll leave this checkbox so that I can also manually start the workflow if I need to. And then I'll hit publish here, and the workflow should be then ready to be used in SharePoint once it has been published. So now that the workflow has been published to SharePoint, I'll switch to SharePoint. Here I'm currently logged in as an administrator, so I'll switch to be a different user. Let's say Jane Doe. So now I'm logged in as Jane Doe, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an InfoPath form to my SharePoint form library. and just enter my name here. And I'll click Save. Give it a name. Once the InfoPath form has been saved, you'll see that the SharePoint Designer workflow has kicked off here. It says in progress. And then we'll have to wait a while. I'll refresh it. And then here you'll see that it has completed. So we should be able to go to the My List custom list and then see that a list item was created. I can repeat the process. Let's take a different user and enter Clovis Carvalho. And then I'll save it as form 2. And then again you'll see that the workflow ran and it completed. And then if I go to the My List custom list, you'll see that a second SharePoint list item was created.